What's up, everybody? I hope y'all are all as excited as I am for this debut episode. It's been long anticipated. I've been talking about it for a long time, but here we are. We're finally getting to it. Before we get into this Week 13 NFL recap, I do want to let you know we will be covering all sports on this platform. So if you are into sports, we will be giving you takes, stats, talking about hot things going on around the sports world, as well as trades and things that may have happened as well. So definitely hit that like, follow, and subscribe button. It will be greatly appreciated. And y'all know how it is, man. It's going to be fun. It's going to be growth. It's going to be a lot of action, a lot of talking going on. So without further ado, let's get into this Week 13. All right, so of course we started off on Thanksgiving Day this week. 3 games on Thanksgiving Day, some big games. Y'all know how the standings currently are in the NFL. You don't know what to expect on a week-to-week basis. It's pure chaos. What a better week to start than this week. Sports chaos with Dame. Let's get into it. And of course, we started off with the Packers-Lions. Packers traveling into Detroit to face the Lions in a big division matchup where the Lions came in as, I believe, a 2.5-point favorite, but they haven't won, I believe, 4 home games prior to this on Thanksgiving Day. It may even be 5. And the luck continued to trend against them because they lost this one at home in a tough game against the Packers, 31-24, where they lost Amon-Ra St. Brown early in the game to an injury. But I tell you what, if they didn't know anything about Jameson Williams as wide receiver 1 prior to this game, they found out something here. He did have one big drop, but other than that, he played a hell of a game from start to finish, made big plays. Jared Goff was 20 of 26, 256 and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs, 17 carries, 83 yards, pretty efficient. He didn't find the end zone on the ground, but, still a pretty good day fighting through and playing through that injury that he's been dealing with. And as I said earlier, Jameson Williams, 7 for 144 and a touchdown. So like I said, that was a good performance there. It really was a defensive game to start with the 3-0 first quarter that the Packers had to lead on the road, which was always good. Come out on the road, big division game. So they took that 3-0 lead into the second where they ended up having a 14-14 quarter. So they went into half with that 3-0 lead, which is, like, again, is big on the road. And then, of course, they ended the game with a 3-0 quarter as well in the favor of the Lions, but it wasn't enough to get it done. So that was a good game there to start off the slate. And then, of course, we got into the Chiefs-Cowboys game where a lot of people was looking at this as if this could be a game where whoever lost this could be missing the playoffs this year. And, Patty Mahomes is Patty Mahomes, so it's hard to always go against him in these type of games. But the Chiefs look like, even though they came off the Super Bowl last year they were finding ways to win. This year, they're having that same type of look, but they're not coming out on the winning side. So it's starting to look like the Kansas City luck's running out. But again, until they're down and out completely, you can never count them out. But they went on the road to Dallas and lost a tough game where this offense in Dallas looked phenomenal. Defense is coming on. I know a lot of people didn't agree with the Quinnen Williams deal. They thought they gave up too much, but when you can get an interior threat that's young, all pro caliber, and he can change the interior of your defense, not to mention they did get Kenny Clark in the Micah Parsons deal. So you put those two guys next to each other with Overshawn coming back. As y'all see over the last few weeks, Dallas's defense has finally been looking like the defense that y'all may have thought as Dallas fans. Of course, they're not all the way there, but you're starting to see those flashes. You're starting to see them get the stops that they need and make the plays that they need, be better against the run, which was the biggest concern of all, right, for Dallas, which is a big part of why they let Micah go, to get that interior force in Kenny Clark. But nonetheless, they went in and got the win, 31-28 as 3.5-point underdogs at home. They actually won the game by 3. Shout out to Dak Prescott. He had one hell of a game, 27-39, 320 and 2 scores. Javonte Williams had 17 carries to go with 59 yards. CeeDee Lamb, 7 for 112 and a score. George Pickens had a day. This Cowboys offense, as long as this defense can be something, it's looking like they could put a couple wins together. They may just be able to snag a wild card spot and maybe even win a division with the way that things are looking in Philly. So we'll see how that goes. But I tell you what, Dak Prescott is looking like the Prescott at the beginning of the season. I know they had some rough patches in the middle, but that's neither here nor there because now he's coming on as of late. Pickens and CD continue to, put on these performances week in and week out. And it's starting to become a real debate in that locker room. I ain't going to say in that locker room, around the world of, is George Pickens really wide receiver 1 in Dallas? And that's not a knock on CD Lamb, but it's just a praise for George Pickens and how good he really is. You know, we always knew outside one-on-one, he was a threat. Nobody really wants to give him that look. But now when you shade the CD, you can't leave him one-on-one. And you shade to him, you can't leave CD one-on-one. And he's also adding into his route tree, showing you a lot more of a full receiver. So you're starting to see more of him. And it's great to see. But the problem is he has to get paid. So are they going to pay him the money they need? Are they going to franchise tag him after him balling out? Because, you know, these things can lead to issues. And then as far as the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, what do we think about this team? Where do they go? Of course, there's still 5 weeks left in the season, so there's a lot of football to be played. A lot of things can happen. You don't want to take too much out of 1 week. But as I said, currently, you know, sitting in an unfamiliar position as far as they go, they don't really know what to expect. I mean, you know, they're 6-6 at 500, third place in their division with 5 games to go. So, or really, yeah, with 5 games to go. So I don't know exactly how, you know, they're going to respond, because is this who they are? Is the Chiefs era over? Is it time for something new? I don't know. It's interesting, but nonetheless, shout out to the Cowboys on a hell of a win. That was a big time win, big time performance in front of the world. So now you got to go out and do it again next week. And then, of course, to finish off Thanksgiving, we had the primetime game in Baltimore with Joe Burrow returning for the Cincinnati Bengals in a big divisional game. The Ravens just looked horrible. Shot themselves in the foot time and time again. 5 turnovers, likely fumbling going into the end zone. Lamar throwing the ball, trying to pull it down. You know, essentially the tuck rule for a turnover, a fumble turnover. It was just all bad. Everything that they could have did offensively to cost themselves the game, they did it. Burrow came back, looked pretty damn good for his first game back since week 2. And they got a big time win on the road, 32-14 over the Ravens. And essentially you would say dominating fashion, because although it was a lot of self mishaps, you got to credit Cincinnati. You know, their defense had 5 turnovers in that game. I believe they had 10 all year. So they got half of what they got all year in one game against the Baltimore Ravens. So, you know, it's tough because this division is still wide open. You know, you talk about them getting that win there. So now they're currently at 4-8. Pittsburgh and Baltimore at 6-6. Baltimore and Pittsburgh play next week. And then Pittsburgh and Baltimore play the week after. So a lot can happen here in these next few weeks. So it's going to be very interesting. But like I said, that Bengals defense, best performance of the year. So will they build off of that? Will they kind of do like they did last year and run off the last 5 or 6 games to give themselves a chance at the playoffs? We'll see. It'll be interesting. But Burrow, 24-46, 261, 2 scores. Chase Brown added 15 carries for 78 yards. Ja'Marr Chase, of course, being Ja'Marr Chase when he got his guy out there, 7 for 110. He did not find the end zone, but he had a very productive day through the air. And like I said, they just, from start to finish, dominated the game. And Baltimore falling to 6-6 due to Pittsburgh's loss to Buffalo. They do still lead a division just based on common opponents, but they play each other twice in the next few weeks. So it'll be very interesting to see how this AFC North pans out. But the Bengals put together a hell of a performance on the big stage to end the prime time or end Thanksgiving night with a good win for that organization in Joe Burrow's return. And then, of course, we had the lone game on Friday, which was the Chicago Bears versus the Philadelphia Eagles, in a matchup of 2 teams sitting at the top of their division late in the year, looking for, you know, not only their division title, but also to claim that 1 seed so that way they have home field advantage as well as the first round bye in the playoffs. And shout out to the Chicago Bears because they traveled into Philadelphia as 7-point underdogs and won the game by 9 in a 24-15 win. There's a lot of talk about this Philadelphia team. Where do they go? What will happen on a week-to-week basis? Is this going to be a meltdown like we seen 2 years ago when they started off, 9-0? And lost the last 9 or 10 games? I don't believe it could be that bad. I do believe there's some problems there. I don't know exactly what it is. The team's built to win. Coming into this year, everybody was like, well, this team can three-peat, maybe even run 4. They're built for the long haul. They don't have a weakness. They even went out and made trades to fill some voids and came up big. And it still just don't seem like enough. Of course, they're still leading their division. They still have a good record. You don't want to take too much out of it, but when you watch, you see that something is going on. And whatever that something is, it has to be figured out and nipped in the bud quick. or things are going to go downhill for the team that people thought could possibly, like I said, repeat, maybe even three-peat. So it's going to get real interesting for them Eagles, man. 0 points, 3 points, 6 points, 6 points at home in a game where these are two teams that could be essentially fighting for the one seed. Your home crowd booed you all night long. Everything that y'all did. It's crazy because fans are so tough, but at the same time, we understand when you're held to that standard, the standard is the standard. And Philly has not been playing so well the last few weeks, but here they are, 8-4, 4-2 in their division, still one of the best teams in the NFL, but we're having this discussion. So over these next 5 weeks, the trend will tell us if they will continue to fall or if they will get through whatever they're dealing with and, go to make a Super Bowl run and repeat. But I mean, like I said, Jalen Hurts was 19 of 34, 230 and 2 scores. Chicago had a day on the ground. Swift, the backup running back, really had a day. Nange, 22 carries, 130 yards in the score. AJ, 10 for 132 and 2 touchdowns. Keep him happy. But again, the offense wasn't what it needed to be. So they got to find some type of common balance here. I don't know if Hurts needs to get his confidence up because of the things going on, but whatever it is, they have to figure it out because they're just too good of a team to get to this point and then start falling down and lose everything that they done worked so hard for. So it'll be interesting to see, next week how they respond, but hell of a win by Chicago there. And for all the ones that was doubting Caleb Williams, that boy's getting it done. That boy's getting it done. Even if it always doesn't look the best, he's finding ways to win games. And that's all that matters when you're a starting quarterback in the NFL. You can be bad for the first two, the first three, but in the fourth, if you can be that guy, says a lot. Says a lot. And then the San Francisco 49ers, coming off the win over the Carolina Panthers, travel to Cleveland to face Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns in a game that has a lot of hype around it. Shedeur had his first start last week. He got a win. People didn't know what to expect this week. So all the hype was behind Shedeur Sanders, and people didn't know what to expect. And they came into this game at home. Of course, Cleveland's defense is strong. And honestly, Shedeur didn't have a bad game. Shedeur played a pretty solid game. Defense did what they did, of course, but a few questionable calls, a few turnovers that wasn't on the quarterback ended up costing Cleveland, giving the ball up in plus territory multiple times. I mean, Purdy was 16 of 29, 168 in the score. CMC had 20 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown. So it wasn't like they were on the field just shredding Cleveland's defense, which I said earlier is stout, one of the best in the league. Their offense is just piss poor, so, they can't put up points. But that defense, if they had a half-decent offense, would be they already are, but just imagine, they're a Super Bowl caliber defense. They really are. Myles Garrett on the edge, man-child. Y'all see what he's doing out there. Denzel Ward on the back end, elite corner, top 5, very underrated. Never spoke about a whole lot for whatever reason. But, that's discussions for another day. But again, and then Shedeur was 16 of 25, 149 and a touchdown. He did have 3 sacks. He has a problem of holding the ball too long when things break down and he tries to hold on and get out. But he's not a mobile quarterback. That'll come with time. He was able to get away with that a lot more in college than he will at the NFL level. But again, he's coming into the season when everybody's in their prime, really getting into playoff form for the teams like the 9-4 San Francisco 49ers. And he's just now getting first team reps with the starters. So to come in and have a solid game, take care of the football, have a 93.6 QBR, I'm not mad at that. That's of course he was immediately named a starter for next week. But again, the better team won 26-8. It's no surprise. The Niners had the easiest schedule in the league. They're still a good team. They will make the playoffs. And that's just kind of what it is. And now we'll get to see Cam Ward versus Shedeur next week. Both of the young quarterbacks. I think we'll know who'll win that game just off the strength of the defense. Let's see what these two guys do out there next week. You just got to continue to build. And then, of course, we had the Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Tennessee to face the Titans. Everybody probably had Jacksonville winning this game, but let's be honest, you don't know what Jacksonville you're going to get on a week-to-week basis. Jacksonville will come out and play great football, and you'll be like, man, they could beat anybody in their conference. And then they'll come out the next week and be like, oh, well, they might not even make the playoffs. They might be a subpar 500 team again. But they came out and did what they were supposed to do in this one, winning 25-3 over a one-win Titans team to move to 8-4. Big division win. Always got to take those however you can get them because division wins are always tough somehow, some way. So, they got the win there. There really ain't much to talk about in this one because the game was the game. Tennessee had 3 points. Cam Ward was 24-38, 141. No touchdowns, no picks. Trevor Lawrence, 16 of 27, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, with a 111.5 QBR. So he had a day. There wasn't a lot rushing. I mean, Pollard was the best rusher on the day. He did average 6 yards per carry. He had 10 for 60, but that was that. And yeah, I mean, the Jags are looking to continue to stack wins and get into the postseason. Meanwhile, the Titans are just looking to stack reps and get better instead of punting the ball on 4th and 3 when they're 1 and 11 to get that offensive rep and work on them situational plays and moments. They punt the ball. And then the coach comes out and says, well, we already had planned to punt the ball on 4th and 3, but if it was 4th and 2 or less, we were going to go for it. It's 1 yard. Y'all are 1 and 11. Go for it. But this is what bad organizations do. And then guys like Cam Ward will get away with it this year, but sooner than later, he'll start being critiqued. When it's the organization is bad. You don't have a casual NFL fan that could probably go name 5 players on the Tennessee Titans. That's not a disrespect or shade to nobody over there, because there's some ballers over there if you really know the NFL. But as a whole, when it comes to competing, they're just bad. And it starts at the top. I mean, they got rid of Mike Vrabel. They traded A.J. Brown. They did right by Henry, I guess, because they're a bad team. So they gave him an opportunity to go elsewhere to get a chance to win, because they did peak with him in the conference championship and they were never going back. So they did right by Derrick Henry, but that's another player that you still let go that could be very valuable to a team like the one you have now. The list goes on. So hopefully Tennessee gets it together. Hopefully they hit this year in the draft, make a trade that can help them, whatever the case may be. But they got to put some weapons around Cam Ward. The defense isn't horrible, but they do have a few spots that they can fill. And that's that. And then as far as Jacksonville, like I said, continue to stack wins, look to get into the postseason, look to win the division, because they're not too far behind now with the Texans win over the Colts. And then, of course, we're talking about no Travis Hunter. So they're doing this without Travis Hunter. When he went down, he was starting to play better ball as well. So shout out to Jacksonville, doing what they got to do, continuing to stack wins, 8-4, moving into week 14. And then, of course, right on time, we have the other division matchup of the week in that division there, which was the Houston Texans traveling to Lucas Oil Stadium to face the Colts. And the biggest headline coming into this one, well, I guess you could say 2, but the biggest one was, of course, Daniel Jones coming in playing on a fractured fibula, which is crazy. You could tell that he didn't belong out there. However, they managed to make it work. They limited him being hit, and they played a competitive game. However, they did end up losing 20-16, which is a big game, because now we have the 8-4 Jags that we just talked about. You have the 7-5 Texans, and you have the 8-4 Colts. So this division is now super, super tight. We know the best defense in the division is Houston by far. They're one of the best in the league. The Colts are playing pretty good defense as well. Of course, Sauce just went down. That'll probably be a few weeks, maybe a season ender. We don't know. And then the best offense, obviously, is the Colts. But if the Texans can find a groove, they're an interesting team. And they were able to gut a win out on the road in Indy. Huge, huge game there. The Colts would have liked to have this one. But my thing with them is the biggest concern here is Daniel Jones. Because I get wanting to be the 1 seed, right? And competing. And of course, your division is not secure at this point either. So you want to make sure that you get in the playoffs. But if you believe your backup quarterback, which was a top 5 pick just a few years back, could get in there and maybe win you 1 or 2 games to give Daniel Jones a few weeks off to let that fibula heal, that would probably be the best thing. Because winning now, once you get to the playoffs and he's playing and he's not able to get this healed, it's a different game. We all know that. And then at that point, y'all just aren't who y'all were. So it's a tough situation. You know, quarterbacks is always out there if they could be out there. But what if, man, I don't know. That's a tricky, tricky situation. But C.J. Stroud in his return was 22 of 35, 276, no scores and a pick. We talked about their offense been struggling, and there it was. Nico actually scored a touchdown, a rushing touchdown late in the game to give him the lead. Daniel Jones, 14 of 27, 201, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He was only sacked 1 time. As I said, they did a good job of manipulating his leg. However, they weren't able to get the win, so you could always wonder, were they not able to open their playbook fully? Did they have to play around his injury? Well, I'd probably say yes, but again, you put him out there to win, so when you lose, it is what it is. Woody Marks had 19 carries for 64 yards. Nick Chubb's 9 for 34. Jonathan Taylor probably with his slowest game of the season so far, 21 for 85 and no touchdowns, which is 4 yards a carry. And then he had 3 receptions also to go for 36 yards. But like I said, the Texans got that big win to move to within 1 game of the Colts now in the conference. and they got that big win by a score of 20-16. Saints Dolphins, another game that was no one really cared about, if we're being honest, right? The 5-7 Dolphins now with the win that they got this week was going against the 2-9 Saints at the time that are now 2-10 in Miami. I expected Miami to win this game. The Saints actually made it tougher than I thought they would. Shout out to Devin Achane, had a day on the ground, 22 for 134 and a score, excuse me. And then, of course, Tua, 12 for 23, 157, no touchdowns and a pick. I don't know what's going on with Tua. I don't know what's going on with this offense. I don't know if McDaniels has been figured out, but it's just bad. It's just bad. It's just bad. I don't know what's going on. Their defense actually been playing pretty good lately, which has been a bright spot for them because, their defense wasn't very good at the beginning of the year either. So at least they're starting to put it together. I do think Miami can go on a little win streak here with the rest of their schedule, though. So it'll be interesting to see how they finish. But I'm not too sold on them. They got to win over a team that they're supposed to get a win over, in my opinion, by a score of 21-17 at home. So you don't take too much out of it. Tyler Shuff, though, did have a pretty damn good day. Actually, he had a damn good day, 26 of 38, 239, or 2 touchdowns and a pick. He also has 6 carries for 18 yards. As I said, Achane had a day on the ground. Other than that, Devin Neal, the rookie from Kansas, had 14 for 47 for the Saints. Wasn't too much there. Von Vele led them in receiving, 8 for 93 in the score. They also added a score as well. Darren Waller led the Dolphins in receiving in his first game back, 2 for 47. So that was the score there. Both of those teams' seasons are probably done. However, like I said, the Saints is definitely done. The Dolphins, however, it's interesting there because, as I mentioned, they can possibly win out. If they win out, where does that put them? Because the AFC is tough, but the AFC is also kind of rocky right now. So you never know. So all you got to do is keep stacking weeks and see what happens. But as for now, I don't really think that either one of these teams will be in the postseason this year. Shout out to the Dolphins getting a big win, though, to keep stacking those wins late in the season. Wait, Jets, Falcons, what a game it was at MetLife, baby. What a game it was. I don't know if you was glued to the TV for this one or if you was watching Red Zone or whatever the case may be, but if you had any glimpses of this game, you know what type of game this was. It was crazy from start to finish. We started with a 0-0 first quarter. And then it was 7-7, 10-7, 13-7. It was very, very competitive for two teams that you probably don't care to watch because they were both at 3 wins coming into the week. But the Jets were at 2 wins and the Falcons were at 4 wins. And the Jets came out with the 27-24 win on the game-winning field goal. It was a hell of a game. I mean, a hell of a game. Cousins was 21 of 33, 234 in the score. Rod Taylor, 19 of 33, 172 in the score. Breece Hall, 19 for 68 in the score. Bijan, 23 for 142 in the score. Tyler Algier even had a score. Who led him in scoring this week? Kyle Pitts led him in scoring, 7 for 82. He did not find the end zone. However, David Sills from West Virginia actually found the end zone on one of his 2 catches on the night. And then Adonai Mitchell, shout out to him. They said they loved him being on the outside as one of those guys, and he showed up for them big time, having 8 for 102 in a score with a late touchdown to keep them in the game. I honestly think that him and Garrett Wilson could be a problem. Of course, I like Fields. It is what it is, but we know at this level that Justin Fields just isn't seeming like that guy. So when they get a quarterback to go with them 2 guys, and they got a boatload of draft picks that they can either trade and make a splash or draft right and end up with some fucking dogs out there in New York, this Jets team can really become a problem because they have 2 receivers. They have a running back. Breece Hall is like that. I know they had problems at the beginning of the year. They was talking about Braylon over him. They got to stop. Breece Hall is one of them guys. Keep him, Mitchell, and Wilson, and you got to worry about your quarterback, your O-line there, and then just stack on defense. They got 5 or 6 first-round draft picks over the next 2 years. Why not? Should be able to build that team into something. But anyway, that was a hell of a win there and probably the best game of the weekend from start to finish. But as I said, a lot of people probably wasn't tuned in because of who the teams are, what their records are, unless you're a fan, which is understandable. But you got to tune into all the games because you never know. You might just miss the best game of the weekend. And how about them Arizona Cardinals and Brissett? I mean, they're not winning a lot of games, but Brissett is coming out here basing shit up. You hear me? I mean, this week, what did he go for? 29 of 40, 301, 2 touchdowns and a pick. I mean, Baker had was 18 to 28, 194 and a touchdown. And we know Baker's playing through, I believe it's an AC joint injury, but still, Brissett, week in and week out, they done benched their $200 million man for Brissett because of what he's been able to do with this offense. They're able to open up their playbook more with him than they are their $200 million quarterback. It's crazy. He's really out here putting up numbers. He's not winning games, a lot of games, but again, he's putting up numbers. He's making this team fun to watch for the fans at this point in the year. And every game, other than I believe the Seattle game, has been very competitive. They lost 20-17 on the road against Tampa, but this was a big game for Tampa. Tampa was sitting at 6-5. They couldn't afford to fall to 500. You know, they're fighting for their division as well. Cardinals season's over. They're just looking to play, consistent football and get better week by week and hopefully make it to the all season and make some moves that can make them more competitive next year. Like I said, Brissett, this is the question going into the offseason for this team, because what do you do? Is their team interested in Kyler Murray? Do you move on from him? Do you try to keep a guy like Brissett? Do you go draft a guy? Has Brissett shown them enough, meaning the Cardinals organization, that they believe that he could be a starter there for the next few years, although he's not winning games right now? It's a lot of questions that Arizona has to answer. Meanwhile, one of the best offenses in the league, somehow they're sitting at 7-5. You don't know what to expect. It's not guaranteed they win their division either. So this is a team that's really on the bubble. Through the first 6 weeks of the season, you would have said they were a playoff team. But due to injuries and some other unfortunate things, it's got a little spooky for them. So we'll see how this goes. But I mean, as of right now, they're not really panicking. They're still winning their division, but Carolina is 7-6, and they're going to be fighting with them to the end of the season. And I doubt whoever, unless they were to like maybe both win out, maybe one can make a wild card. But other than that, only one of them teams are going to get in. So it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out in that division there. But this was a huge win for Tampa Bay for sure. Of course, we get into the biggest upset of the weekend, which was Carolina hosting the LA Rams, which were currently 9-2 when they walked into that Carolina stadium as 10.5-point favorites and lost outright 31-28. It was another great game to watch. This could maybe edge the Jets and Falcons game for game of the week, because it was a little more intense, because the Panthers went for it on fourth down twice and scored touchdowns on both of them. And I don't mean like in the red zone. They were outside the red zone, probably 40, 50-yard touchdowns, and the crowd just went electric both times. So it was a super fun game to watch. Bryce Young was 15-20, 206, and 3 scores. I tell you what, Bryce Young looked like he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the league one week. The next week, he looks like he could be a bottom 5. If he could just be consistent. They got a good young core. The defense is solid. This team is actually going to be a problem, I think. And he has his confidence, but he just has to get it done and play more consistent on a week-to-week basis. But if he could stack a few weeks like he did this last week, this Panthers team will win that division and they'll get into the playoffs and be a problem for some people, even with the youth on that team. Shout out Rico Dowdle too, another Cinderella story. Came into the year, him and Chuba Hubbard, Hubbard was going to be the lead back, and Dowdle's been balling. I mean, they split carries this week. He went for 58. Hubbard went for 83. Neither one of them scored, but overall, Dowdle has been balling. So shout out to them. And I think Ted McMillan's going to be a problem in this league as well. He's a very good, big receiver. So shout out to the Carolina Panthers getting a huge win, keeping them right there with the Tampa Bay Bucks for the division race and getting a win over the best team in the NFC as of week 13. I mean, Matt Stafford was probably the league MVP maybe coming into this week for a lot of people. When he turned the ball over, I believe, 3 times, 18-28, 243, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. I believe he had a fumble as well. I could be wrong there. Blake Corum, 7-81 in the touchdown. He averaged 11.6 on a day, so he had a good day. And that was that. I mean, Puka did have 6 catches, 72 yards, no score. Devontae had 4 catches with 2 scores. But again, they lost the game. That Rams defense looked the worst that they have all year. Coming into the season, nobody would have expected that defense to be this good. We knew the D-line was good. The secondary has been playing very good. Emmanuel Forbes got exposed on both of those fourth downs I had spoke about earlier, giving up big play touchdowns. So will this be something moving forward that can become a problem? Because we know they don't have no big names. They're not very elite back there, but they've been playing great team, sound, disciplined football. But maybe the Carolina Panthers open something up this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. But nonetheless, still think the Rams are one of the best teams in the NFC. Never want to take too much out of one week. So that will be that for that. And then It made it interesting though, because now them and the Niners, I believe, let's see, 9-3, 9-3, 9-4. So that division is super tough. So that loss was huge. We'll keep it short and sweet with this one because there wasn't much to talk about. Seattle at home shut out the Vikings 26 bagel. Yes, that is 26-0. Rosmer was 19-30, 126, and 4 picks for a 32.8 QBR. And Sam Darnold was 14-26, 128. He didn't even have to throw a touchdown. And they had one rushing score and won the game 26-0. So Seattle didn't look too good offensively. However, then Darnold really just had to manage the game. Defense shut Brosmer down. They couldn't do nothing. And that was that. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because, like I said, there ain't much to really talk about. Seattle's fighting to win their division and get into the postseason. Minnesota's done at this point. Sam Darnold against his old team that he led to 14 wins and made the postseason. And it came out after the game, I believe it was after the game, that they actually offered him a contract pretty similar to the one that he accepted in Seattle, except I believe it was 1 year driven or something along those lines, and he didn't want it. Anyway, it's working out for Seattle because Geno Smith looks bad in Vegas. Darnold is continuing to play well. The games that they've lost, he's looked bad. That's for sure. So you take the good with the bad, but there's been way more good than bad in this season for them. And that Seattle defense, Mike McDaniel, he can call his defenses, the head guy out there in charge of that team. So I think Seattle will get into the playoffs and be a problem for some teams. JSN's a dog. I don't like to give people the best receiver in the league off 1 year. I always say you got to do it 2 or 3 consistently before you get in that conversation, because people like to change that conversation too much. It don't change that much, in my opinion. But again, these are discussions for other days. So that's that. Big win for Seattle moving forward. And then the Bills traveled into Pittsburgh to play the Steelers, and what a game that was. It was my 7-3 game at half in favor of Pittsburgh, but then they come out in the third quarter and just got bad luck. Everything went against them. They got outscored 13-0 that quarter and then 10-0 in the fourth. So they got shut out in the second half and got beat 26-7 after being up 7-3 at half. I actually seen a stat today that said on 44, listen, I'm going to say that again, 44% of Pittsburgh snaps, they didn't gain at least 1 yard. Wow. I'm not the guy to do this. I like Mike Tomlin a lot, but sometimes enough is enough. We seen it in Philadelphia with Andy Reid, as good as a coach he was. He went to, enough is enough. He went to Kansas City. You see what he's doing in Kansas City. And now it's looking like right now, maybe in Kansas City, enough is enough. So there may be another journey ahead for him. But nonetheless, what I'm getting at is I think after this season, depending on how it ends, they may have to split ways with Mike Tomlin and just get a fresh reset, fresh culture build. He's been there a long time. Him and Harbaugh is the 2 longest tenured head coaches in the NFL. Just happen to be in the same division. But when you talk about it, the standard is which Tomlin loves to preach. Hey, man, I believe they've lost 5 or 6 straight playoff games. And every year, even if they start off good, they start to come into the middle of the season where they come back to life, and then they end up like a 9-18 fighting for the playoffs or something along those lines. And it's like, you can't do that every year, because just squeaking by to get into the postseason, to be one of those 7 teams and then get bounced first round every year, it isn't like you're playing good football and you're getting in and you're getting out. Like as a 1 or 2 seed, you're barely squeaking in and then you're getting beat in embarrassing ways. So I think after this season, it could get real interesting in Pittsburgh, but we'll see. That's not my place. I don't like to even say things like that, but just as a thought of Andy Reid and, these long tenures and how fast coaches are being fired in today's world, the fact that he's been there so long, there's a lot of heat on him. And then you had the fans even chanting fire Tomlin. Like, I think when the fans start doing it, because we all know the fans of Pittsburgh love Mike T, that's when you start to think about it and be like, okay, maybe we do have to consider this. So I think it gets real interesting. But again, the off seasons in sports are always wild, so you never know what to expect. But again, shout out to Buffalo going into Pittsburgh and getting that 26-7 win. Josh Allen's 15-23, 123, a touchdown and a pick. He had an early pick. James Cook had a day, 32 for 144. He did not score, but he averaged 4.5 a carry and carried the workload. A-Rod, 10-21, 117, no touchdowns, no picks. Of course, Rudolph came in, was 0 for 3. The running game was non-existent. They had 58 yards total rushing between 3 guys. That's horrible. That's not going to help. So it's going to be a huge game next week. 6-6 Pittsburgh, 6-6 Baltimore Ravens. Whoever wins this game will be in a division lead, and they meet again in a few weeks as well. So Pittsburgh's either going to fall quick or rise quick. And in the next few weeks, we'll see which one it's going to be. And then, of course, we had the LA Chargers hosting their division rival, Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders have been playing horrible, just came off of firing their offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly, last week. So you didn't know what to expect from them offensively, especially. But the Chargers, we know, needed to win this game. They're another team, started off blazing, came back, started playing real mediocre 50-50 ball. However, they're still currently sitting here at 8-4. Herbert's been hurt the last 2 weeks in and out of the game. He's getting surgery on his left hand. We'll see if that'll be an issue for them late in the season because they're fighting for not only their division, but of course a playoff spot as well. But they got the win in convincing fashion, 31-14. But again, the Raiders are horrible. So this really isn't a surprise. Geno Smith, 18-23, 165, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So not a horrible day, but he ain't doing much. Rick, 15-20, 151, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Again, not doing much. Vidal had a day, 25 for 126 in the score for 5 yards a carry. Jared Patterson even came in the game and had 11 for 54 for 5 yards a carry in the score as well. Jency, 15 carries for 31 yards for 2 yards a carry, no scores. Didn't do much. Again, that Vegas offense hasn't really been doing much of nothing this season, which is why they currently sit with 2 wins. So shout out to the Chargers getting that big win to move to 8-4. Of course, now they are currently second in their conference, 2 games above the Chiefs, 2 games back of the Broncos. So it'll be interesting to see if they can close that gap there in the last 5 weeks to win the division. If not, they'll be fighting for a wild card spot, which right now they're sitting pretty good, but a lot can change in a few weeks, so we will see. And you know what's crazy? I mentioned Jets-Falcons as the game of the week. There was another game that I said was pretty good as well, but the Commanders-Broncos game was another epic game. Prime time. Marcus Mariota in D.C. is QB1. Of course, Jaden Daniels on the sideline hurt. The 9-2 Broncos coming to town. And it was a game from start to finish where the Broncos won 27-26 and the game ended on a 2-point conversion where the play was drawn up beautifully. The running back was wide open, but the DN came off the edge and spiked it down to the ground. Well executed defensively. Great play offensively. When you do that, it's a chess match. Somebody got to win. The defense came off the edge and got the bat down. Otherwise, that's a walk-in touchdown for the win. Of course, the Commanders aren't playing for much. Their season's cooked at this point. The Broncos are playing for not only to win their division, but the 1 seed as well. That loss could have really shook things up for them. Bo Nix was 29-45 for 321, a touchdown and a pick. He also had 2 carries for 16 yards. Mariota was 28-50, 294, 2 touchdowns and a pick, and 10 carries for 55 yards as well. So Mariota carried the workload yesterday. He led them, obviously, in rushing with the 55. R.J. Harvey had 32 for 35 for the Broncos with 2 scores. And like I said, that was just a classic game. At the end of the game, you had the touchdown by Terry to tie it. They called it back. The next play, 3rd and 14, Debo up top on Riley Moss, gets tackled at the 1, and then they end up holding them for the next 3 plays, get it to 4th and goal, give up the touchdown, and then, of course, they call the dogs out to go for 2. Drew up a good play, but the defense got the deflection the bat down and won the game. So it was a classic game. That's a big game. This is big moving forward for the Broncos because that loss would have been tough with the situation they're currently in, the stakes that they're currently playing for. So they were somehow able to get another close game victory. If you don't believe in this team, you don't have to, because I'm kind of on that fence with you if I'm being honest. But one thing's for sure, they find ways to win. They've done it all season, game in and game out. So if one thing, they know how to win, and that makes for a dangerous team. So we'll see how they go moving forward and into the postseason. But that was a hell of a win last night on the road. And then we're going to get into this Monday night primetime game, which was New England versus the Giants. This was a tricky one because the Giants been playing good ball, but they lose games in the 4th quarter. The Patriots are playing great ball, but when they play mediocre or subpar teams, they don't really play their best, almost as if they play to the level of competition. But tonight, that was a different story. The Giants came out and played like the 2-win Giants that they are, and the New England Patriots came out and played like the 11-2 New England Patriots that they are after the win, by winning 33-15, went up 17-0 in the 1st quarter and never looked back, outscoring the Giants 13-7 in the 2nd. It was a 0-0 third, and then an 8-3 4th in favor of the Giants, which didn't matter because the game, of course, was already over at that point. Drake May was 24-31, 282 and 2 touchdowns. Travion Henderson had 11 for 67 for 6 yards a carry. Devin Singletary actually had a decent day, 12 for 68 for 5.7 a carry. And the score, Jackson Dart, 17 to 24, 139 and a touchdown. He actually didn't run the ball a whole lot today. He had 4 carries for 20 yards. So I'm guessing they're probably trying to wind him down a little bit with it being so late in the year, so he don't take some beatings that he don't need to take, because you know that he is a physical quarterback. He likes to try to get those extra yards. They're probably trying to wind him back a little bit if I had to guess. But nonetheless, like I said, they came out, played bad ball today. The Patriots played good ball, smacked them in the mouth early and put the game away at home. So they moved 11-2. They're now the top seed in the AFC as of today. I look for them to continue to keep playing good ball. They have a few tough games over the next few weeks, so you'll start to see, how they are against some of these other playoff caliber teams late in the season. As teams are starting to find their stride and who they are, so it'll be interesting. And of course, this is episode 1, so I appreciate everybody that's going to be tapping in and takes the time to watch this video. Please do me a favor and like, follow, share. This is video 1 of many. We, again, will be following and covering all sports, whether that is MLB, NBA, NFL, NCAA, men's and women's basketball, as well as soccer, UFC, and boxing. We will be covering everything. We are the sports channel for you. Trust and believe. We're just getting started, but I'm going to be truly, and I am truly thankful for each and every one of you that will be taking the time to watch my videos, like my videos, comment on my videos, and share. And one last thing before I go, I do want to let y'all know that we will also be doing live broadcasts eventually. Be on the lookout for that. We'll also have some games that we'll be putting in to segments to play with, people when we have those live audiences. And last but not least, we will be doing 3 to 4 episodes per week, starting with this one, on different sports content throughout the week. Depending on how we feel, might even do some more. But I definitely appreciate y'all tapping in. As always, let's go.